Well, welcome back everybody to our fourth and final lesson in this series on trusting the story, believing and following.
We'll have to do some more.
Yeah, we may have to.
Yeah,
This has been fun. We'll
Yeah.
have to do
Yeah.
this again.
Yeah.
And look, there's a lot of them.
Oh, sure.
But I'm really
Absolutely.
excited about this one because we
Okay.
do get the rest of the story.
Paul Harvey.
Yeah, it's kind of like a
Yeah,
Paul
yeah.
Harvey moment.
Yeah.
Because we get the rest of Esther. And then
Right.
we throw her into the story. Of course, we are in this series of trusting the story. We've looked at Abraham and Isaac, Joshua and the Israelites and what was going on there. And then last lesson we saw Mordecai and how he was living right in a crazy culture, living that counterculture life and trusting God's story. And again, it's a reminder by that God's never mentioned in Esther. The name of God's never mentioned, but He's everywhere.
Right.
Just like us in our lives.
Right.
So, so we left off the story with Haman being so mad at Mordecai because he wouldn't bow
down to him.
that he wanted to not just kill Mordecai but exterminate the whole Jewish nation that was left
Right.
there in Persia. So
So he comes up with a plan.
yeah, kind of
Well,
bring us up to date.
he kind of tells the king, he says, "Look, we got these people that are hanging out here, living amongst us, that are going to have an uprising, and we got to take care of that."
So he kind of makes
Kinda
the
makes up
king-
a story.
makes up a story and makes the king afraid.
Right. And so he says, "Hey, on this certain day, let's go out and let's exterminate these people." And so Mordecai finds out about it, and he has to go to Esther because she's got an inside track to the king.
Right. And his request was what?
To Esther, yeah, hey, you've got to go before him because you need to plead for our case.
Right. Because she was Jewish.
Right.
Up until this point, no one knows she's Jewish. She hasn't revealed her identity. So Haman doesn't know this.
Right. And I love the verse you've got on here.
Oh yeah.
It's a good one.
Because the problem with going into the king at this time,
It's
even
like you
though
said,
she
the
was-
royal protocols.
The royal protocols were you don't go into the presence of the king. The queen is not like, hey, king, hey, queen.
It's not like she's sitting next to him on the throne.
She has to be invited.
Right.
And if anyone shows up uninvited and they get the thumbs down,
Yeah.
then they're killed.
Right.
But if he extends the scepter to her, then she gets to come in.
Right.
So she's not been invited to the king, and Mordecai says, you got to step in through the door and go plead the case of your people.
Right.
Well, who's the king's right-hand man?
Haman.
Haman.
Yeah.
Who's going to be in there with him? Haman. So all this for Esther, who's this, we don't know how old she is. We are assuming she's a young girl in this position, and nobody knows she's Jewish. And rightfully, she's scared. I'm scared to death. And then Haman, her cousin / dad, who raised her, Mordecai, says these words to her that probably most people are familiar with, but man, they're awesome
Esther
words.
4:12-16. When Esther's words reported Mordecai, he sent back this answer: "Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. But you and your father's family will perish." And I love this verse. "And who knows but that you have come to royal position for such a time as this."
I love that verse.
Yeah.
I love that verse. What does it say about Mordecai? And
Well,
his
he
faith in
trusts
God?
the story.
He trusts
He's like,
the
God's
story.
got it. Hey, he's put you here for this reason. It's got to be. I mean,
Yeah. And
it's cool.
you're not going to be saved.
Right.
Once they find out you're Jewish, just because you're
Because
part of the
it's
king's
a
house,
law of the Medes and the Persians.
the law of the Medes and the Persians is once the edict is made, it cannot be revoked.
Right.
And boy, that thickens the plot.
Yeah.
And all this.
Well, it even gets thicker in a minute.
Oh, much thicker as they go on here. So Esther has some legitimate fear, but we see Mordecai trusting God even in the middle of a crazy situation. It's an interesting thing too, Billy, because I don't like necessarily to ask people to do hard things.
Yeah.
that like, okay, this could really be, especially if they're dangerous. And when we were working at camp, if there was a dirty job to do, I would go do it, or you and I would go do it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember a lot of dirty jobs that we
yeah.
did that we just wouldn't ask other people to do. We just go do it. I'd rather do the dirty job than ask somebody to go do it. But in this particular case, he has
She was the only one.
She's the only one, and he has enough trust in God and the story that God is working to put the girl he raised on the line for it. Mm-hmm. That's a sacrificial theme.
Sure.
That's all throughout the Bible.
Yeah.
You've got to be willing to sacrifice yourself, my daughter, cousin daughter, that I raised and that I love, in order to save your people.
Right.
You've got to plead the case. There's a whole theme throughout the Bible there. Well, verse 15, Esther's response. Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai. Go, gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish.
Wow.
Such a pivotal moment for Esther. Mm-hmm. Because it's at this point, she is trusting the story.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's all right.
Because before she's just kind of going, okay, what do you want me to do? You want me to go up there and get in the pageant to be the queen? And, okay. And she just kind of followed along with all that. And now she's the queen and she's realizing I'm part of this.
I'm more than here because I got picked.
Right.
There I am here for such a time as this.
Right.
Even before it said in chapter 2 from our last lesson that she didn't disclose that she was Jewish because she was still following Mordecai's instructions as he raised her. Now it's this moment.
But she gives some instructions right there.
Oh, all right. Y'all go fast for me. You gather all of them. Y'all fast and pray for me for 3 days. Myself and my attendants will do the same thing. Then I will go. Interesting thing. When that praying and fasting thing was not necessarily happening in pagan cultures. Theirs was the indulging and revelry thing.
Correct, yeah.
But this was denying themselves. And she knew where she found strength and was denying herself because she knew this was a spiritual thing. Mm-hmm. This was a faith pivotal moment for Esther. And we all have those faith moments. And they're not just one-time faith moments. They're faith moments throughout our walk with the Lord. And it's almost like you can see the progression of faith. Here she is growing up in captivity, not knowing Jerusalem, never been to the temple, probably never went to the temple, even after it was rebuilt. But she knew what was right, and it was poured into her. And then as she went into the king's palace, still followed those instructions as Mordecai, her cousin father, poured into her.
Right.
But now it's that moment, that faith pivotal moment.
Where it's her faith now.
Where it's hers.
Not his.
If I die, I die.
Right.
And then the story continues.
So she goes in.
Mm-hmm.
And he sees her, puts out the scepter, or however he did it. I mean, woo, come on, whatever.
I love,
Yeah,
I love the part in the Veggie Tales, which if you've never seen the Veggie Tale of Esther, you need to go find it and read it or watch it. It's really good. He's like, oh, sure, my Queenie Pooh can see me anytime.
Yeah.
And so it's that, come on in, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, of course, he probably saw her go, oh, hey, come on in. Yeah, woo. I don't know.
And so he brought her in and she didn't disclose right then.
Yeah, he said, what do you want? What do you need me to do for you? Mm-hmm. She goes, I'd like to have a little banquet for you and Haman.
Right. So she's smart.
Yeah.
She's one of those, that Matthew 10 verse that we ended with last.
Be shrewd as snakes and
she was
innocent
shrewd,
as a dove. Yeah.
Because she knew where she was.
Yeah.
And she had to be smart. She was smart. Just kind of like Mordecai.
And how many times did she have a banquet? 3 times?
I can't. Yeah,
I think it was 3.
I think it was.
But I don't
3
think she was quite ready. Okay, I need to say this to him, but I'm not quite there yet.
So it's this build up.
Yeah.
So even when we make the decisions, it still didn't take the nervousness out of it.
Right.
All right, I'm going to go do this.
I'm gonna tell him. I'll tell you what. Let's have another banquet tomorrow night.
Oh yeah, they're like, oh, this is great.
And Haman's thinking, giddy up.
Hey, I'm hanging out with the king and the
queen. She's invited me to the banquet.
And I think he was even, look, I get to eat with the queen. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Then it
king one
thickens.
night can't sleep.
Yeah, so the king can't sleep. And so he's like, he turns on the, the news feed, basically. He says, hey, read the royal records to me. So
I guess when the king can't sleep, the royal record readers don't sleep either.
Right. So he's going,
read
okay, on this day you did this, and he's going on all of a sudden. And on this day, a plot was uncovered to assassinate. What? Wait, I forgot all about that thing.
Oh, Big Thana tried to take me out.
What did we do for that guy? What did we do for that guy? Well, nothing. Well, we have to reward this guy who uncovered that plot.
And that was Haman.
No.
Mordecai
And
who did that.
Yeah, it was Mordecai. He said, what should we do for somebody who I need to honor? And him hung around. He said, where's one of my, advisors?
Hey, Haman.
And
Come
they said,
in here.
Haman just came in the court, bring Haman in here. So King Xerxes says, hey, Haman, I need to ask you something. What do you do if we need to really pay honor to someone who I'm really pleased with? Well, Haman's like, oh, he's talking about me.
I mean, after all,
Well, if you're going to honor somebody who you're really pleased with, what you should do is carry him around the kingdom on your best horse in one of your robes and have somebody leading that horse around, telling everybody how great this guy is. And the king's like, that's a pretty good plan. I think I'll go with that. Why don't you take Mordecai, one of my guards, and put him on that horse and do just what you said? And I want you to lead him around. And I'm sure his face went, huh?
Yeah,
What?
This is where the Bible says his face fell.
Yeah.
Oh.
Because here he is thinking, the king's talking about me, and then the guy I really hate,
And
who
that
wouldn't
I'm
bow
trying
down
to
to me.
kill and his whole family.
And
his
he
whole
would not bow
nation,
and honor me. I've got to go take him around
and honor him.
What a change of the story here. How ironic is that?
I love God's ironic moments
Yeah.
in Scripture. And
Yeah.
this was it wasn't the biggest celestial spanking that
It's a pretty good one,
that
though.
he would get, because in a chapter 2 after that, it's the ultimate celestial spanking.
But it just made Haman even more. It just made his. He hated him.
incensed.
Yeah, he was incensed. Yeah.
And more determined than ever to not only kill Mordecai but all the Jews.
Right.
Which makes what Esther was doing so much more important and how brave she really was. Because I'm sure Esther knew this was happening. And she was like, oh no, I really have to do something.
Well, then Haman had some gallows built, especially for Mordecai.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, we're going to hang Mordecai right here. We're
And
going to
that's
build
why they
this
call
thing
him
up.
Haman the Hangman.
Yep, we're going to hang him right here. I can't wait for that date to come so we can just execute all these people, and I'm going to be rid of this guy.
So they come along, all this thickening plot. Mm-hmm. They finally get to the banquet and the time that it's the king, the queen, and Haman. And the queen
Spills the beans.
So we find that in chapter 7. So the king and Haman went to Queen Esther's banquet. And as they were drinking wine on the second day, the king again said, Queen Esther, what is your petition? It will be given you. What is your request? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be granted. Then Queen Esther answered, If I have found favor with you, your majesty, and if it pleases you, grant me my life. This is my petition. And spare my people. This is my request. For I and my people have been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated If we had merely been sold as male and female slaves, I would have kept quiet, but no such distress would justify disturbing the king. King Xerxes asked Queen, Who is he? Who is he, the man who dared to do such a thing? Esther said, An adversary and an enemy, this vile Haman.
This vile Haman.
And can you see him sitting there chewing on a turkey leg? Huh? Me? You know?
What?
What?
Yeah.
You're talking about me? Then Haman was terrified before the king and queen. The king got up in a rage, left his wine, and went out into the palace garden. But Haman realized that the king had already decided his fate, stayed behind to beg Queen Esther
This is
for
even
his
worse.
life. Just as the king returned from the palace guard to the banquet hall, Haman was falling on the couch where Esther was reclining. Will you even molest the queen while she's with me in the house? This went from bad to worse for Haman the Haman.
Yeah.
As soon as the word left the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. Then Harbana, one of the eunuchs attending the king, said, A pole reaching to the height of 50 cubits stands by Haman's house. He had it set up for Mordecai, who spoke up to help the king. The king said, Impale him on it. So they impaled Haman on the pole he had set up for Mordecai. Then the king's fury subsided. I can't help but read that chapter and just not giggle through it because of God's justice, of God's irony.
Can I back up just a little bit?
Yeah.
Let me back up. And this kind of goes back to our lesson about Joshua.
Yeah.
Okay? In chapter 6, after he'd taken Mordecai around, he rushed home with his head covered in grief. Mm-hmm. He told his wife and all his friends everything that had happened to him. His advisors and his wife said to him, Since Mordecai, before whom your downfall has started, is of Jewish origin, you cannot stand against him. Mm-hmm. You will surely come to ruin. So they tried to say, hey, you just need to shut this down.
Yes, just leave it alone. Let it go.
They all advised him, man, you're heading for, heading for destruction. Mm-hmm. And he didn't listen to him. Of course, by then, I guess it was too late.
Well, and now, his pride had really just taken over and consumed him.
But he had a chance.
He had a chance. Just like you said.
That's what I'm saying. He had a chance to change and say, you know what? Mordecai, he did a good thing for you, king, and I'm sorry. And we need to rethink this little law we put in place.
Yeah, he will bring down the prideful.
Yeah. Well, even then, the law he put in, they couldn't change it.
They couldn't change it.
But they allowed the Jews to defend themselves.
Right. So they set the date for it to happen, but then they said, all right, y'all get ready to defend yourself. Get yourself equipped to fight. And then they were like, we're not messing with them.
Right.
We're going to do it.
Right.
And so nothing happened.
Right.
And so they, to this day, the Jews still celebrate the Feast of Purim, mm-hmm. which is to commemorate what happened in the book of Esther. And it's a story that's still told because it's a story of sacrifice, it's a story of redemption, a story of faith, and trusting God to work in the middle of a desperate, scary circumstance. And so the take home, I think, as in all of these, is trust the story. We're following a God that works behind the scenes, believing in a God that works behind the scenes, even when we don't understand it, even when the culture is against it, even when it's hard. And in this case, when we're scared to death, mm-hmm. we are scared. But it's those scary moments that we step out and actually find ourselves walking on some water like Peter did.
That's right.
And knowing that we're serving a God that has got us.
And you also need to think, if you're in Haman's shoes, don't be fighting against God.
Oh, look, that because you will lose.
You will lose. Yeah.
You'll find yourself impaled on a stake that you intended for somebody else. The things and the deceit and the deception that you intended harm will come back on you.
That's right.
And because he didn't trust the story.
That's right.
So the challenge in this and the challenge in all of these lessons is trust the story.
We're
all going to go through different things in our life, things that we don't understand, things we don't know, times when it's hard, things when it doesn't make sense, times that we're scared. Trust the story.
Trust the story.
He's been working in all of these and many more, and he's still working in all of our lives.
Amen.